Here in Tampa Bay, we know the drill when hurricane season comes around. And while it's hard to forget the devastation that occurred in 2024, we're not looking backwards. It's time to look at the work we put in to make us stronger today and for years to come. Our weather team is out in our local communities, checking in on what's new and improved for 2026, from infrastructure projects to new AI models and forecasting tools. 10 Tampa Bay News is making sure you are storm ready. I'm 10 Tampa Bay Chief Meteorologist Bobby Deskins, and over the nearly 2 decades that I've spent here, I've seen some of the worst storms that have affected our area. Many of our communities are still recovering from Hurricanes Helene and Milton, which brought deadly flooding to both our coastal and inland areas. But over the next half hour, myself and our team of meteorologists here at 10 Tampa Bay are going to be looking at what's happening now to better protect you and your family the next time a storm strikes. We have James Hopkins at the National Weather Service's Ruskin office, Courtney Jacobazzi at the Pinellas County Emergency Operations Center, Colleen Campbell down in Sarasota, and James Gregorio at our Weather Center at 10 Tampa Bay News. But before we get to all of that, we need to talk El Nino. El Nino forms when the water along the equator west of South America gets warmer than normal. That creates more wind shear over the Atlantic, which is not good for making hurricanes, and in fact, it can blow them apart. That means you tend to get less hurricanes, but that doesn't mean we're in the clear. 1992 was also an El Nino season, and the named storm, the first one that year, was Hurricane Andrew. It became the most destructive storm to ever hit Florida and did so much damage it literally changed the building codes in our state. That's why it's so important to remember, it only takes one. Something new coming up this year is a newer version of the hurricane cone. You know, the forecast cone that shows where the center of a storm might go? This year, the National Hurricane Center is adding watches and warnings to that forecast graphic. Here's the warning specialist from the National Hurricane Center to explain the impact.
We hope that now by having those available, when people go to the cone to understand where the storm is going, they'll see that, oh, my area is painted in red. I'm in a hurricane warning. I need to be taking appropriate action now because the storm's going to hit me in the next, say, day or 2 days. So it's just meant to more comprehensively show what the entire risk is, not just if you're at the coast.
So here's a look at the difference using Hurricane Milton as an example. I want you to pay attention at what's highlighted. You can see just how much more coverage this new cone will give us, which will make a huge difference in understanding the severe weather risk. The people putting out those watches and warnings work at the National Weather Service office in Ruskin. Meteorologist James Hopkins is out there now for a closer look.
Yeah, I'm here at the National Weather Service office in Ruskin. Now, people in this building monitor our local weather 24/7. So we wanted to ask them what's different during hurricane season.
When we go into hurricane operations, we are changing from our normal 9-hour shifts into 12-hour shifts to make sure that we have adequate crew here 24/7. We're trying to collect as much data in the moment.
So do you guys get with, I guess, the city, the county? You guys coordinate with them and you make that decision that it's time to evacuate?
Yes, as much as we're coordinating with the National Hurricane Center on all of the watches and warnings and information related to the storm, we're also coordinating just as much with our emergency managers.
And they actually also have an official spotter network too.
Yes, our spotter network is a network of volunteers who will provide reports of what they've experienced weather-wise. That also helps us in the moment as well as after the fact. We all live in this area. I even grew up in this area, and it is truly our neighbors. It is truly our friends and family that, when we're issuing this, we have in mind.
Bobby, one thing that continues to change in hurricane forecasting is artificial intelligence. It's something we've been looking at too.
You know, I spoke to the National Hurricane Center director about how they're using AI models this year. They tell me that in some cases, those models are more accurate than models that they've been using for decades.
So they started to come on board, I would say 2 years ago. We just got a kind of initial look at them.
It's really different than traditional weather modeling. You used to see the models change once a year maybe. Now the AI models are rolling out new models every few weeks or every few months.
And then last year we had full access to the Google DeepMind model throughout the hurricane season. For Melissa, it did excellent. We saw that it helped us with our track forecasting. It helped us with our intensity forecasting. There were some other storms that didn't quite do as well with, and so we're kind of in that stage now of evaluating all of the forecasts to understand when it does well and when we still need to maybe take pause and still apply all the other models.
It's an opportunity and a challenge. They're not the end-all be-all.
Something that's really emphasized in that conversation is that it's important to remember that there is always a human verifying those models and the data before it's actually put into the system. And the reason why we need the models to be accurate is so that we know where to deploy resources and evacuate people before the storm. I want to bring in meteorologist Courtney Jacobazzi. Courtney, you're at a place where the main focus is protecting people from the dangers of the hurricane.
Yeah, Bobby, I'm here at the Emergency Operations Center in Pinellas County, and when storms threaten the area, this place turns into the headquarters for hurricane response.
Today, it just looks like an empty computer room, right? Lots of stations, but when we activate, we actually can bring in over 200 people. We actually break this up into different groups because, as you can imagine, there's a lot of activity going on. We actually added more seating here in the EOC. It was like standing room only here between Helene and Milton.
You guys really do here think of every worst case scenario here.
Yes, yeah, and I think to the average person, they're like, why are you calling evacuation so early? We hear that a lot, right? But from my perspective, I'm trying to make sure that about 1 million people in our entire geographic county are protected. Time is the one resource you cannot get more of, because the closer you get to the winds arriving, the fewer options you have. And if you do nothing else, just get out of harm's way.
Right. And Bobby, especially here in Pinellas County, a big part of storm preparation, both for emergency crews and homeowners, is that threat for storm surge.
Yeah, Courtney, water is the #1 killer in hurricanes, and storm surge is one of the biggest ones for that, inland flooding as well. Storm surge is literally the hurricane force winds blowing the water from the Gulf up onto land. The bigger the storm, the higher the wind, the shape of the coast, the depth out there in the Gulf, that all makes a difference. And so each storm can change and have different levels of storm surge. But imagine 1 to 3 foot of surge pushing the water up onto the beaches, potentially over the dunes. 3 to 6 foot of surge here would put water over most dunes and into some houses. Now imagine 6 to 9 feet of storm surge. That's essentially what we saw during Hurricane Helene in 2024. We know the damage that did, and we could see a storm like that happen once again. So it's really important to know your zone. And if you are asked to evacuate, please do so. We want to get people out of the way, out of harm's way, and make sure you and your family are safe. We are seeing more of an effort to let people know how high the storm surge can get in certain areas. 10 Tampa Bay meteorologist Colleen Campbell's in Sarasota. Colleen, you're at a popular beach spot that officials hope can turn into an important reminder.
Yeah, Bobby, it may be hard to tell from this shot, but if we zoom out, these storm surge poles are hard to miss.
We want to encourage people to understand what those colors mean when those maps come out, and we want them to come stand next to the pole and really get a sense of how tall 6 feet of water can be. Especially for me, because obviously I'm not from here, I'm from Australia, so when I see feet, I don't really understand what that means. So seeing that definitely puts things into perspective.
The different colors are coordinated with what the storm surge could be.
That helps a lot if the people knows, like how high the water can get. You can move like way more faster.
We talk to people all the time that have this misconception that 5 feet of water really isn't that dangerous.
But when you see 3 feet, 3 feet is more than half my height.
Every storm is different. Tropical Storm Debbie was a great reminder for us that it doesn't have to be a hurricane to dump an incredible amount of rain. So if you hear somebody say it's just a tropical storm, you really need to take that out of your vocabulary.
Yeah, Bobby, that's something that officials are really trying to emphasize, that even if you don't live by the coast, inland flooding is still a major threat.
Yeah, we saw that really hit hard after Hurricane Milton in Hernando, Pasco, and inland Hillsborough County, especially in those neighborhoods near the rivers. Now, I did say something to the National Hurricane Center director about that, and he tells me they're working on launching a brand new flood inundation map that will debut this September.
And in Florida, that's a particular challenge, like you mentioned. It can be very long duration. It's a pretty flat state. When you get a lot of rainfall and flooding, it takes a long time to come up and it takes a long time to go down. So you want to be aware that if you live in a flood-prone area from freshwater flooding, that may be another place you have to evacuate as well.
So that's very exciting, and we'll have that towards the end of this upcoming season. It's really going to help us be prepared for the future. Don't go anywhere. Coming up next, we're taking you along with us for a tour of the hurricane hunters. We'll give you a close-up look at the science happening on board to get us the most accurate forecast. Plus, wondering what the deal is with storm recovery? We've got the latest on 2 major local projects aimed at keeping your lights on and your homes dry in the next storm. So, you know, tracking hurricanes, one of the most important parts of that is the data. Where's the storm? What does it look like? These planes behind me and their teams of aviators track those hurricanes right in the middle of the storm. These are the hurricane hunters, and we're out here at Sarasota International Airport to learn all about them.
We're walking up to the port hatch of the WP3 Delta. We're a hurricane hunter, Miss Piggy. You have scientists come in and like, hey, I want to put my equipment on your plane. And they'll be like, sure, I'll hook it up into our data system and we'll figure it out. It's quite a lot to tackle, and they do an excellent job.
So a lot of extra room from the PC, obviously bigger, but like usually it's instrumentation all the way front to back.
Yeah, it's a storm mission. It's just strictly crew. So this is our dropson tube. These are the dropsons themselves. Throughout the storm, we'll probably drop about 20 to 30. It collects temperature, wind speed, direction, pressure, everything like that, and gives us kind of a real-time feed to the airplane. What's so important about the real-time updates is that, you know, these storm missions can be 6, 10, 12 hours long. If we landed and then provided that info, storm would be in an entirely, you know, different spot or completely change in characteristics.
These seats are pretty unique to this upcoming season. These are where we're going to be stationing some of our drone operators. There's antennas and the equipment that they need to be able to tell it where to travel and where to do measurements within the storm.
And so what's different from that, a dropson will just drop down and take some time to float to the surface, but this drone literally can spend hours flying around, 1 to 2 hours.
1 to 2 hours is pretty accurate.
You know, if all the instrumentation is down, they can gauge the wind speed of the storm from the sea foam down below. And they can get it down to within like 5 knots, which is always, I'm always blown away because they have like their charts and they're always checking, it looks about like this.
So all this technology, but looking at the sea surface state, get it within 5 knots.
Exactly, you know, it's amazing.
So when you see our forecast, then you know that that data is coming from these planes right here. It's going into those forecast models and it's helping us to give a better forecast. And this year, they're even more prepared than ever.
Bobby just showed you what the planes look like on the inside, but this is what they're doing once they fly into a storm. They don't just fly around the hurricane, they fly directly through it. They use a crisscross alpha pattern cutting across different sides of the storm and passing through the center. That repeated path helps meteorologists find the exact location of the eye and compare the winds, the pressure, the structure. And earlier, we told you a little bit about those instruments called dropsons. They're launched from the bottom of the aircraft, and a small parachute helps slow their fall through the storm. As they fall, they create a vertical snapshot of what's happening inside the hurricane. All of that information goes straight back to forecasters to help improve track and intensity for the forecast before a hurricane reaches land.
Back here in Pinellas County, we're getting a look at those infrastructure projects related to storm recovery and resilience. We talked to leaders about 2 major projects that are all about long-term solutions. It's really important to give homeowners here in this densely populated coastal county a sense of security.
We're at the Bay Point Stormwater Conservation Area. It used to be a golf course. We're going to expand this to the ponds. We're going to redo the trails through here. We're also going to reduce instances of flooding, especially along on this side of the property where Hurricane Hermine had breached that wall and caused a lot of residential flooding. So, you know, we've got that designed so it's not going to happen again. The county's, you know, pretty well built out. You're not going to find an opportunity like this again.
The 24 storms just emphasized the need for this project. It did impact our electrical equipment. We had about 2 feet of water. The station was offline for a little bit over a month. The new station, it will have a waterproof pump room. All the equipment will be on the top floor, a little bit over 18 feet.
Speaking of new and improved, next we're taking a look at the brand new State Emergency Operations Center and why its director says this building is purpose-built.
One of the things we always try and emphasize is all the different risks and dangers that come before, during, and after a storm. We say it all the time, know your zone. Have a backup power supply for medical devices. Keep generators in ventilated areas, and probably most important, check on your loved ones. Unfortunately, sometimes those messages can get drowned out. But the 2024 hurricane season showed us that those risks have real and deadly consequences. We want to bring in 10 Investigates Jen Titus back in the studio. Jen, you've looked through every single death record from Hurricanes Helene and Milton, and these cases are hard to forget.
Yeah, Bobby, I can tell you that reading through these reports detailing how these people died, it's something that you will remember when the next storm nears. Between those 2 storms, 33 people in the Tampa Bay area passed away. 23 of them were over the age of 65. So that's a demographic we know is always vulnerable in a hurricane. As you can probably expect, almost half of the deaths were drownings from storm surge. But the second most common cause of death is one we don't always consider: blunt impact trauma. Going through some of those cases, 7 of them were falls, with those ages ranging from 73 to 94 years old. One man fell down the stairs while headed to the parking lot of his apartment complex to move his car from rising floodwaters. 5 others fell while making repairs after Hurricane Milton and did not recover. I also want to bring attention to 2 people who died in car accidents. One woman drowned after her car accidentally drove into a retention pond because the driver could not see the road underneath the floodwaters. Another woman was a passenger in a car that was T-boned driving through an intersection that had traffic lights with no power. And Bobby, we're bringing up these cases not just to rehash the past, but to remember that these people were part of our community. Knowing how they died can change our perspective going into hurricane season, and hopefully we can better avoid preventable deaths when the next storm hits.
Jen, thank you very much. Like she said, we're always telling you what you need to know, but what she just explained is why you need to know those risks. And our area's unique vulnerability to those post-storm impacts is exactly why listening to evacuation orders is important. This is something that I talked about with the National Hurricane Center director's Michael Brennan. Listen to what he had to say.
You may have to leave 3 or 4 times without getting the very worst storm surge that you could see. But on that 5th or 6th time, you may get the very worst and you're not going to want to be there. Florida has by far the most after the storm fatalities compared to any other state in the United States. There might not be any emergency services, medical services if you have an accident, long duration power outage if you're dependent on a medical device, or keeping your insulin refrigerated if you're diabetic. All those types of things can combine to make the post-storm environment almost as dangerous as the storm itself.
It's definitely something we can't emphasize enough. And when it comes to coordinating evacuations, crews up in the Tallahassee area make sure our local counties have everything they need to make it happen. I want to send it over to meteorologist James Gregorio back in the Weather Center. James, the state just finished major upgrades to the Emergency Operations Center.
Yeah, Bobby, this is going to help the state do its job to make sure we have the resources we need during and after a storm.
So we actually had to do a you are here and kind of just really, instead of dedicating one of our security guards or some person to just doing nothing but this, this is all interactive.
The old Emergency Operations Center could only withstand a Category 3 hurricane, so staff often had to be relocated across the state.
Even the office building side of the house is built to a Cat 5 standard, so we should be able to stay right here.
Not only are there more rooms, but everything has been upgraded.
It gives us the ability to scale for the taxpayer and not, waste energy and waste, electricity on a very, very big room when we can do that in a conference room that's much smaller.
The whole facility costs $185 million, but Guthrie believes it's an investment for taxpayers.
I believe this building will be sitting here 100 years from now.
State officials say it's not a matter of if they'll have to activate the entire operation, but when. And right now, they're better prepared than they've ever been. Bobby?
Thank you, James. Coming up, a final word as we head into hurricane season, and it's a prime example of Tampa Bay's resilience.
Before we go, here's the outlook one more time for this hurricane season. Now, like we said, because of El Nino, we're expecting a below average season, but again, we can't stress this enough. It only takes one storm. And of course, we've got to mention that we are going into this hurricane season with a finished roof on Tropicana Field. This time last year, the roof was still completely open, and we got lucky there wasn't a storm to do more damage to it. All of the panels were replaced by November of last year, which was actually ahead of schedule, with more than enough time for fans to enjoy opening day. From all of us here at 10 Tampa Bay News, thank you for trusting us to keep you storm ready. Stay with us throughout the hurricane season for the most up-to-date and in-depth coverage on the tropics.